Oh my gosh, I am so excited, a little bit nervous and terrified, but really looking forward to pulling back the curtains on this next episode where I'm interviewing my own son, Zach, who I love more than anything in the world. And I am going to ask him some really tough questions about his experience growing up in this digital world, in the anxious generation, what I did wrong, what I did right, and some ideas and suggestions that he has for Gen Z, for this generation, and how you, as a parent, as a caretaker, as someone who loves a child, can really help them to navigate a really, really difficult time. I am super excited that this is our first time recording for the Bad Mom podcast, Parenting the Anxious Generation. And I wanted to have you here for so many reasons, but I'm a little bit terrified and scared of some of your answers because I'm going to ask you some really personal questions, and I think questions that reflect on me also as your mother. And we have really been through it and been through it together. And you've been through it also on your own. And I just have so much admiration for how you can articulate what's going on with your generation and your experiences. Can you paint a picture for people who are listening of what your lowest point looked like? Not all the clinical details, but maybe what a typical day felt like when you were most isolated. So what would you like to share?
I struggled a lot with a bunch of different mental health problems and disorders for pretty much my whole life. On the bad days, I was laying in bed pretty much all day, attempting to just distract my mind for 2 seconds to get any sort of relief from the spiraling that was going on in my mind. My OCD had completely taken over my life, and I was pretty much incapable of talking to or texting people and making calls. It would take me sometimes up to 20 minutes to send a text message, a line of text, because my OCD was so bad. And I was also attempting to run a business at the same point in time, and I was self-medicating. I was just trying to stay afloat mentally and not be sucked in so far down the world. I mean, just the whirlwind of life and information. Some days I would just be sick or motivationless, and other days I would be fine. But it was such a back and forth, and I just was lonely.
You and I have talked a lot about isolation, and it was very difficult to figure out as a parent what to do. And that's kind of where the bad mom comes from. And also realizing that you were in a world that I didn't really know that much about, right? You are kind of the portion of Gen Z that started to grow up without a smartphone and then were able to get it in middle school and beyond. And I know you will blame me forever that you were one of the last kids in your class to get a smartphone. And we did really try to control it, but there's a world, a world that wasn't going on in the 3D that I think you and so many of your generation is involved with. And I mean, you were 100% a COVID kid. You were graduating high school in 2020 when the world completely stopped. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about that experience of isolation and how it contributed to the place that you found yourself.
I could go on a spiel about how unique my age range is in comparison to the rest of Gen Z, and how we had a lot of social development before becoming heavily involved in the social media sphere and completely becoming one with technology. We were able to develop our personalities and our sense of self a little bit more beforehand. And then that sense of self became enmeshed with the digital world. in like a really kind of interesting and bizarre way that a lot of other kids who maybe even are 2 years older or younger than me didn't get the chance to have. The class of 2020 was actually probably like the best equipped to deal with COVID out of the rest of my generation in a really bizarre way. But like it wasn't easy. I mean, it really, really, really sucked not being able to have the senior year and beginning to spend a lot of time talking to people digitally, like even more time. I definitely was not shy of having really long, drawn out FaceTime calls, but a lot of my intimate connection came from really long, drawn out FaceTime calls. And
right. In 2020, when you were sitting in your bedroom all by yourself, forbidden from seeing anybody or, meeting your friends or having a prom or having your senior dinners or anything like that. And then all of a sudden you have this like drive-by graduation day where you're not allowed to talk to anybody, but you get to walk across the podium. And, how was that for you in that moment?
There was never really an end to anything. There was never an end to the high school years. There's never an end to it. It just kind of felt like an event rather than a conclusion. And there was no there's no kibosh really put on everything.
Well, I mean, when you describe that situation of laying in your bed, not really able to move or function, kind of, living in a digital world, self-medicating, etc. Honestly, I think a lot of parents can relate to that. That's what I see a lot of is these young men who are struggling, who feel isolated, who are in a world where, they're being made wrong for a zillion reasons. And it's like, what the heck? Standing here now, where you're in a much better place, a transitional place, what would you have? And how worried I was, how worried we were.
Oh, yeah.
What would you have told me, knowing what you know now, what would you have told me then in order to A, get me off your back, and B, give me some hope and solace?
The one thing, realistically, I was isolated from every single community I'd ever had. It was a locational thing. It was purely, it was literally like I was taking a break from school. I was back home in San Diego. The only people who are close to me are either friends that I've made, maybe a few friends I made online, and my parents. And like what would have helped me the most was just finding a sense of community and finding a group of people I could go to. I didn't know where to find it. There was no place where I could go in the situation that I was in where like I would have been able to find it. And it's like, I would have been able to bring myself out of that hole if I would have had that opportunity. I fully do believe to some extent. I think I would have needed some help, but like I want help work with me to find help. Don't impose it upon me.
So what would you tell a parent?
I would say if your kid was anything like me or is anything like me, there's something that he's sad about. There's something that's going on that you don't know that is going on, that he's hiding from or they're hiding from, that they're running from. I think just a lot of people deal with this. I think it's relationships. I think it's like romantic relationships that seriously knocks these kids out. And the way that we experience them is so different.
Yeah.
There's no rule book. There's no manual. There's no instructional case on how to talk to people online in order to get them to like you. But it's still something that is so important to the relationship and the dynamic. And a lot of people who might have like certain mental disorders or whatever it might be are substantially at higher risk of developing some really intense attachment issues. So like if you can imagine the infused, capitalistic nature of social media sites attempting to rob you of all of your time and your attention, mixing with love and the manipulation of that, like it's really, really powerful.
Wow, that is so huge. That is really huge. So basically, you're saying here you are, let's just say representing young men or young people who are sensitive, right? I mean, you're a sensitive being, you're a sensitive soul. You put all of that together and now you're young and innocent and kind of thrown into this world where everything's moving so much faster. There's all kinds of visual representation. These algorithms are messing with you. You're trying to make connections and you don't have the rule book or the tool book for how to deal with it. And you don't feel like you're successful with it. And so you get isolated.
One thing that I definitely saw a lot of men in my generation go through was a lot of grifting. I could use so many bad words for these people, but a lot of people who took advantage of that lack of knowledge that men had and that discomfort, the simple discomfort that like a lot of us had. And they basically used it as a means to light a fire of hatred and anger, of confusion inside of young men, and to take advantage of their attention. There's a lot of bad people online. There's a lot of grifters that I've seen a lot of men in my generation fall victim to. And it sends them down these crazy dark rabbit holes in places where they end up finding community with a bunch of other like-minded people, but it's all fueled out of hate and a lack of education. I know so many guys who went through this stuff. Like some of us grew out of it, some of us didn't. And the ones who didn't are struggling. Actually, there's new waves. I could go on and on about the incel problem in our world. But
well, let's make that another episode where we are just talking about that, because I think that is such an enormous issue. And I would just love to find a way and a movement to empower you and people in your generation to pull each other out of that, because it is not a happy place.
No, I think one thing that helped me out personally was finding people online who had similar values to me and also simultaneously understood the problem and could be good role models for us as young men. Because a lot of what we deal with is just like, you know, you're a cis white man, and like a lot of what is said online can feel like a barrage of hate towards you, but it's really not. Sometimes obviously there's people who abuse it and will take advantage of it, but like if you can become educated on like societal issues in like a quick amount of time and like get a good footholding, you could become a lot more comfortable with how the world's changing and evolving around you. It's just out of love. You just have to learn how to love.
Oh, I love that. That is really it, right? I mean, and to be in a place where you know that if you love, you will get love back. And I think that the big wound is we're all afraid. And I think in your generation, it got super heightened because of all of the visibility and the likes and the social media and the gaming and the, you know, just like, honestly, we'll talk about it another time, the incel and pornography and what young men in particular have access to, that it just got really scared to show any love, right? To just show your vulnerability. So I think finding those communities where you can do that is really important. So you've got COVID, that whole 2020 and around 2020 world had a different experience than anybody anticipated for you. Like the normal went completely out the door. You're more and more isolated. Do you feel as though that isolation and sort of paralysis about knowing the right thing to do or the right thing to say, that led to more isolation, more fear about even making some connections, inroads, etc.?
Yeah. No, I think the idea of being socially perfect is a thing that a lot of people struggle with in our generation. Being like, you have to learn all the social norms and you have to know how to execute upon them in like a really direct way.
I have so much admiration for you, how you stepped into mentoring and into mentoring young men. What would you say to like a 16, 17-year-old who's kind of in this morass? You know, there's all kinds of substances available to you. There's pornography, you're isolated, you got this, like, you're supposed to be so frickin' hip, but you don't know anything. Like, what would your advice be?
The 16 and 17-year-olds right now are a whole different beast, man. I mean, I know a lot of these kids have, like, in the short, they've had access and have been doing drugs since 12. A lot of them. The way that they ingest media is very different to how I ingested media. I think a lot of it is about giving them, they just need to learn how to critically think properly. I mean, I like to, for me to take someone out of a hole, I find that I have to look to understand every single thing that is going on with them. And I have to get inside of their head and understand it. And I'm able to piece the puzzle together and learn most likely why the way they are the way that they are. The problem is that there's so many different reasons that they could be the why they are the way that they are. They've had access to a lot of, variations of media, and communities, and you don't know what the culture is like inside of those communities, especially as a parent. And to them, it's their first language. Is like the language that they speak, the rhetoric they speak in those communities is their first language. They're more involved with those online communities than they are with reality. And the line in the bridge between reality and those internet communities is seriously blurring now. And it's actually becoming now that like the dialogue inside of those communities is what's happening in reality because of like just the overwhelm of it all. It becomes really hard for a parent who doesn't understand the dialogue in the community to communicate with their child anymore properly in a way that the kid will understand.
It sounds like it's a really toxic environment to get yourself engaged with these online communities, not going outside, not being involved in sports or in community or in service. And I think that that's the struggle that parents have is how do you mitigate that? How do you just stop the madness? Like what you were saying before, just there's so much manipulation of a kid's brain, and why are they exposed to this to begin with? And what is a way to just turn it off, like
if we're going to be, I'm not necessarily nihilistic about this. I'm a little bit nihilistic about it. There's regulation. It just needs to be regulation. We live in an incredibly corrupt country where these technological giants that are worth more than any company has ever been worth by like 100 times is working in conjunction with our government in order to basically continuously allow the manipulation of these kids in information and media. Schools right now, the best thing that schools can do, unfortunately, because I think it sucks that like this is not something that can really continue. And I know that a lot of schools are working for, and I know that teachers have quit over, is like they need to ban phones in school. The stuff that exists on phones is just far too addictive and isolating now. Like, especially over the last 4 years, it's a completely different ballgame.
I totally agree with you. I think these oligarchs who are supposed to be the heroes of our generation because they've created technology, and that's created such a huge uptick in our economy and in employment and on and on and on. And in the meantime, we know we have the data. We understand that, it's like Philip Morris and cigarettes, right? We knew for years that cigarettes were going to wipe out an entire generation. And it did. And until legislation got on it, until the special interests were able to the will of the people rolled over the special interests, it didn't happen. And that's what I want to engage your generation and parents in activism to push forward on getting our kids happiness back. You were not happy. Nobody likes to see that in their kid.
It's a matter of education more than anything else. This stuff exists. It's not going away. It's just not. It's simply,
I think we can put the genie back in the bottle. At least a couple legs of the genie.
Yeah, I think certain components of it can be put in the bottle, but I think kids need education around this stuff and how to deal with life. They need life skills and life instructions. They need to know, hey, if I spend this much time on my phone, because we feel it. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of us feel how horrible this is.
But yeah, tell me more about that.
Everything exists there. It exists there more than it exists here.
But is it an addiction?
Yeah, but I
mean, could you put your phone down?
No, we can't put our phone down. We'd lose everything.
Really?
Yes. You cannot exist within modern society without the use of technology. It just does not. It cannot happen. It will not happen. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but we need to learn how to get our brains out of it.
Yeah. So like, what's one thing that you're doing? Because I know that you're addicted to your phone also. And I'm really happy to hear that you know it. I think ultimately that is what I hope I live to see, is that new generations figure it out for themselves, right? Because I can't tell you not to do it. I mean, we can have legislation around it. We can have regulation around it. But how does your generation say this shit is messing up my head, and I want to have a life in the 3D where I'm actually touching people and in community, and that is the cure, right?
I have a nuanced take on all of it. No, I think my best moments pretty much in existence have happened online. Times where I felt the most passionate about things, the most connected to things, have happened online. A lot of it has. Not all of it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I've had great times in person, but like, especially with my brain and the things that I find interesting, I personally cry when I see large scale communities from all around the world, people from around the world, all focusing on one thing to create a new piece of art. Like, that's something that I've cried over a multitude of times. Like, I don't cry over stuff like that in real life.
What is one boundary or rule you're grateful that we had, even if you hated it at the time?
Even though I hated it at the time and it went on a little too long, one thing that I definitely felt was important and impactful to the development of me and my personality was not being able to have social media until later in high school. I think that 9th grade is a pretty all right time if we're being nuanced about it, but 9th or 10th grade.
If you could give one piece of advice to parents who are watching their kids struggle right now and feeling really helpless, because I think that we felt really helpless. What would one piece of advice be?
If they're in their room all day and on devices all day, invite them to maybe potentially sponsor something that they can go and do with their friends.
Get them out of the house.
Yeah. I think that if they've been trapped inside for a really long time, it's one of the most beneficial things to their health. It's kind of like they get recharged. Like, I definitely know for me, just getting out one day, I went to a concert and I felt I was like sick before. And like after doing that, like I was no longer as sick. Everything that I was doing in order to escape and run and hide, I did much more I'd limited myself pretty much.
That's great. That's great. How useful has it been in the backbone of your life to know how loved you are?
It has been very important for me to know that I have this sense that no matter what happens, I will always find people who love me and I will always have people who love me. And it's really, sometimes I can forget about that when I become so isolated and stressed out. And I feel like I don't deserve love in certain moments of time. Being reminded of it, I'm truly blessed to have had the experience with being consistently loved that I've had.
Was I a bad mom?
I think you tried too hard to be a good mom, the best. And I think it was counterintuitive at times. But I always knew, no matter how annoyed or frustrated with you I got, I knew that you were trying to do the best thing for me. And as much as I hated it, I think I've always known that as we grow apart and further away from each other, the more I'll appreciate it.
We all feel like bad moms when we see our kids suffer and struggle. I mean, there's no question about it. And you were definitely a resistant, pushback. I can't do anything right. And so then you just end up feeling like a bad mom. But that's really good to hear. So just in closing, as someone who's coming through kind of the other side of this, you've just grown and developed so much over the last couple of years. What do you want to explore or discuss in future conversations if you become like a regular part of this podcast?
I definitely want to talk about young men's struggle to find meaning and understanding and kind of getting that manual, how to get that through a kid's brain. It's really hard.
Yeah, I remember you talking about how like nobody gave you a manual for it and there is nothing, and now it's just so difficult.
Well, there's the thing is that my belief around it is that there's people who you can watch online who are good people who actually care and like are attempting to educate rather than fight. They're just ignoring all the bullshit now. It's like, this is the way that you could do this, and it's probably the way that you should do it. But like, I'm not gonna. At a certain point, like the people who are trapped in these cycles, these anger cycles, like all you want to do is kind of help them.
The number one most important thing for a young person to not succumb to the mental health crisis that is available to them because of technology, what would you say it is?
I think it is creating the most minor, non-invasive routine that you can possibly do. Get yourself outside. You have to start small. You have to spend time with people and just do it, once every day, you don't put that much pressure on it because it's the pressure that gets you to run away and look in your phone and escape. It just becomes so overwhelming and everybody's procrastinating.
No, it just do the next right thing. One small thing a day.
But it's not even like doing one small thing a day, because I find that the way that that's worded kind of actually creates a lot of pressure. But it's just like, just go outside and hang out with a friend for like an hour or two.
Yeah.
Go get lunch. I think it's scary to get lunch sometimes because it's money and stuff, but like...
That's why you're saying sponsor it. All right. That's great. Thank you for joining us, Zach.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
I think this is the first of many conversations with Zach and some advice and mentorship from someone who's going through it and been through it and is continuing to grow and provides a lot of hope.
There's hope. There is hope, even though it sounds like there's not hope. There, it's just a one, but there's hope.
All right. Thanks, love. You're not a bad mom. You're not a bad parent. You're a badass in a broken system. Keep fighting. We've got your back. This is the unlearning. This is the undoing. This is the uprising. Bad parents unite because they'd rather you stay silent.